Hey everyone, thanks to the EA Content Creators Program, I managed to get my hands on some Season 4 gameplay with the map, the specialist, etc, etc. So grab a cup of tea and let's get into it. Flashpoint is very clearly inspired by Operation Firestorm from Battlefield 3 and of course reworked later in Battlefield 4. Contains many features from that said map, like silos, pipelines, the general sort of things you would expect in an oil field surrounded by the South African desert. DICE have promised us a healthy mix of areas focusing on both infantry and vehicles, and hopefully that will be the case in the Conquest variation. We only got to play the breakthrough version of Flashpoint, and it's got some interesting features. There are some buildings, rises, covers, one section, a large pipeline area that provides plenty of spots for snipers, and of course other infantry gameplay. However, it did feel quite narrow, bringing to mind the last stage of Breakthrough on Noshar Canal. One of my main problems with Breakthrough has always been the overwhelming attacking armour. There's too much of it in my opinion for any of the Breakthrough maps, particularly in the initial stages. This felt even more exacerbated in the early stages of the map, and I will say it continued right through to the end. It felt like the attackers had all the opportunities, and the defenders were very much funneled into a very narrow area of opportunity to defend, and it felt very much like as a defender that you're in a bowl. I'm honestly not a fan of the map in Breakthrough mode. I don't think it's fit for that. I look forward to seeing how it works in Conquest though, particularly the parts we didn't see from playing. Because I was time limited and all my time was on defense, I didn't really get a chance to get hands on with the vehicles, but that being said, I will break down what I know of them. The CAV Brawler is essentially the MAV Mark II, but with some seriously helpful, depending on your point of view, additions. With a couple of open covers for infantry to poke out from, the meme potential here is pretty big. It means you can also repair on the fly with a repair torch without having to exit the vehicle. An active APS system and detection pulse to see any sneaky C5 enemies, like yours truly, makes it a defensively very strong vehicle. Rounding off the vehicle's impressive array of tricks is that it can serve as a spawn beacon for your squad, even if all the seats are full. New specialist Camila Blasco is placed in the Recon class. She's the last specialist being added into 2042 and is described as an ambush specialist. She comes with two abilities. Firstly, she has a stealth trait that means no enemy motion-based tech, forest turrets and robot dogs for example, can spot her, which could provide to be quite useful in some situations. Secondly, her gadget is the X6 infiltration device, which blocks incoming signals, meaning nothing can lock on to anything in the area of influence. Said area is approximately a 20-meter circle, and unlike Irish's APS system or shields, you can only put one down at a time, where it remains until deactivated or destroyed. I am concerned about the conjunction of this with the APS system, although to be honest the APS system does a very, some might say too, good job of taking out explosives, including heli and jet missiles, so it might be a little redundant compared to that. In that light as a system, I'm not entirely sure it's going to be particularly widely used, except for by people who want to stop things attacking their camped vehicles. On that note, I'd like to see the X6 device interfere with enemy APS systems. Maybe that would be something we might see later on as an addition in further patches. Whilst the lack of detection by motion devices does sound attractive, particularly against the OP robo-dogs, let's face it, the vast majority of people who camp are so unobservant you can drop a tank right next to them and they won't notice. The new gadget is the SPH Explosive Launcher, or Mr. Sticky Boom as I'm coining it. The SPH is locked to the Assault class. The first thing you need to know about it is not designed to be anti-vehicle and does a negligible amount of damage to any vehicle, including aircraft. It is definitely an anti-personnel device. It can be fired relatively quickly, twice in succession. You have 4 rounds and then you have to go and get reloaded. Reload can be with a normal ammo box or of course Angel's Crate. The explosives themselves are actually pretty good. They do go the distance and they can indeed blow up a number of enemies. Like all explosives, it will be affected by the APS system, so if Irish is around, you probably won't get many kills with it. I see this as a fun weapon to be used probably more in contained areas like the ship on Stranded, and of course for a few wingsuit memes. However, by and large, I don't think this is a gadget weapon that will massively take over Battlefield 2042, particularly as you have the airburst, which does a much more effective job and doesn't need line of sight. There are 4 new weapons in Season 4, the Super 500 sidearm shotgun, the RPT-31 LMG, the RM-69 assault rifle, and the AC-9 SMG. The RM-68 comes with a built-on suppressor, which doesn't detract from the weapon's punching power like other suppressors do. It's not the only attachment you can have on the gun. All regular attachments are available, but obviously as the built-in one, it helps a little bit more than most. The magazine capacity is the same as the SFAR and AK ranges, and the rate of fire isn't particularly high, sitting somewhere between the SFAR and the AK. I think it probably sits between those two guns in terms of the functionality and usefulness. Again, due to time limitations, I didn't get much time with the AC-9 SMG, but it looks like a K30 equivalent, particularly useful on contained areas with a high rate of fire but lacking the punch of the ubiquitous PP29. The RPT-31 is the new LMG and is a slow-firing, hard-hitting weapon. Now we all know that rate of fire, generally speaking, is king, because the more bullets you throw down range in a certain area, the more chances you have in hitting your opponent and indeed causing more damage per second when you do so. This weapon does pack a punch and will be useful for those wishing to stand off from the action a bit. It's fighting for attention in a pretty crowded section of very nice LMGs and will probably struggle to tear people away from their Avances or PKPs. However, as a weapon, it's a decent middle-of-the-road compromise between rate of fire and punching power. We're also getting the Volt weapons, the SVD and the Type 88 LMG. Overall, while the addition of a map, a gadget, weapons, a specialist and a vehicle is welcome, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be using too many of them at all. Blasco doesn't strike me as a specialist that will tear me away from Sundance, yes I know, unless I really want to be sneaky. Mr. Sticky Boom, the SPH Launcher, again, is a toy that I probably won't use much after T1ing it. Given I like to blow up vehicles a lot, I'll probably stick with C5, which is also more effective at blowing up enemy soldiers, albeit at a much shorter range. Finally, Irish's APS system destroys the explosive, so if someone gets tagged and there's a nearby APS, they can run to it before it explodes to be saved. All in all, it will be a fun and very memey gadget, but as useful gadgets go, I don't think it can replace C5. As far as the map is concerned, once again, I stress that we only got to play the breakthrough variation of the map. But that being said, I did not enjoy it. I found it not particularly well suited for breakthrough. How Conquest plays out is something I'm looking forward to seeing, and that kind of surprised me as genuinely I'm more of a breakthrough player. It remains therefore to be seen whether the promise of an infantry focused area actually pans out. In terms of the new specialist Blasco, while the sphere of influence of her gadget is pretty good, the prevention of lock-on means we all know that it will mainly be used by people camping in their vehicles. I would really like to see the spotting function of her gadget updated so that it interferes with all enemy electronics, therefore rendering things like enemy APS systems redundant, a bit like a more permanent EMP nade targeting other gadgets. It might switch up the amount and usefulness of this specialist. So in conclusion, excluding some badass skins, particularly the one for Irish, for me this is not a particularly exciting season. That being said, playing on the new map is always welcome and I look forward to it, as I say, playing it on Conquest. I don't think the specialist is anything that will drag me away from the ones I currently favour, and beyond T1ing the weapons, they all fall under a similar description. Weirdly, I find the CAV Brawler probably the most exciting thing of Season 4, despite the meme potential of Mr. Sticky Bomb, the SPH Launcher. I'd like to know what you think down in the comments about your expectations before and indeed after the season is released and you've got your hands on it. What do you think of the gadgets and weapons? Does anything grab your attention? The new specialist? The new CAV Brawler? Let me know. Until then, stay Wagyu, and I'll see you on the battlefield.